All right, hello and welcome back to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports, and we are once again chatting to Springbok legend Bobby Skinstad, courtesy of BoyleSports here on the channel. And the very good news is, last time I chatted to Bobby, we said, I said, hopefully the next time I see you, we are World Cup champions, and we are indeed once again World Cup champions. First of all, Bobby, thank you so much once again for chatting to us. And it's almost a month to the day. I think it might actually even be a month to the day. Have you sort of, as it says, it settled down? Has it sort of sunk in that they did indeed go back to back?
They were amazing, and it hasn't really settled in. I mean, I think everybody was so pleased and so excited about it at the time, but just thinking back over the time, I'm sure we annoy everybody by going on and saying, "Wow, how much it meant to us," and what it was like watching. But it was literally, it took being there and being a South African supporter, experiencing that to actually be able to explain how amazing that achievement was. So I'm still settling in, but I'm hoping to just settle in for about another 4 years.
Fair enough. Well, we're starting to get quite used to it, to be fair. We're going to have plenty of practice by the time we get to
Whoa, you see,
27.
that's what I'm worried about. You can't start with that attitude. You'll get us a last place in the next World Cup.
Yeah. Right. So you predicted on let's talk about the match itself. Actually, you predicted a tight game. Um, it doesn't get much tighter. But two things. What? First of all, what do you think it meant for the nation to be able to even win in that sort of way? And what is it about the Springboks and World Cup finals? I mean, we've never lost one, and every single time we get there, a lot of the time we get there, often written off and said, it's almost mission impossible type thing. But they just time and time have shown that they can do it. So what is it about this team that can just pitch up when it counts the most?
Yeah, I I do think about this kind of stuff because obviously, I commentate and although it's a semi side hustle now as I get on in years, and I don't always want to be in front of the camera, I want to just be talking on radio and doing things like that. I really get involved in the motivation of the team and the coach, why they're doing it, what means the most to them, etc. Because that's the journey you learn to go on. It's not just this week's hero. It's people that I've either worked with at a junior level all the way through some of their careers, or known as friends when I played with them, or known as physios. And I'm talking about the Springbok coaching staff. Can you imagine? I mean, Jacques Nienaber was the physio of the Cats when I played a season in Johannesburg. We know each other well. I've got tremendous respect for him. He, even at that stage, was showing real sort of keenness to get into it. At least early on, it was the defensive side of the game that he wanted to be part of more than anything, let alone head coach. And now, only a few short years later, the guy's lifting the World Cup trophy as the head coach of the Springbok team, working alongside Rassie Erasmus and many of these amazing players. So I think what is it about this team? I think there's grit and resilience, and there's pressure which gets worked into your everyday existence. Just being a sportsman in South Africa, being a businessman, being a person in South Africa. There's every day there's a hill you got to climb, just to survive. And sure, we've got some of the most beautiful and amazing places in the world, but we've got a country of stark contrasts. And I think that this team really, really epitomizes the good bits of all those contrasts. The grit and the resilience and the friendship and the jubilance and the timing and the effort and all the things that really add up for a championship team. And I think they really sum it up in one small group of men, of 30 men. The greater squad is bigger than that with all the management, but call it 50 men who go out there as warriors for our country. So I just think that gets infused in their day to day and helps carry them on a rugby journey that they're on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think especially that whole idea of epitomizing everything it is to be South Africa and to undergo those challenges. Talk about the journey. This particular campaign, having to play everyone within the sort of the top 6, 7 in the world on the way to lifting this trophy. Is it fair to say that this might be one of the best World Cup campaigns ever from a team in terms of the route they had to go to actually winning the trophy?
Steve, I think this could be one of the best journeys that any championship team's gone on. And I say that very carefully because there are some incredible sports out there with some very difficult draws and difficult things to win. But I'm a World Cup winner and very proud of it. But I didn't win as difficult a World Cup as these guys won, and I will admit it till the day I die. And because we had a draw which was slightly easier. I'm not saying it at any point is winning a World Cup or any rugby international or anything easy. But I mean, look at the teams that they beat. France in France by a point against one of the best teams that France have had. England were resurgent and difficult and obstinate by a point. And then this All Blacks team, which felt that this was their time. They'd had the difficult World Cup so far. They'd had a difficult run into the World Cup. They've had coaching changes. They've had, their fans not believing in them, and they suddenly started trotting out some amazing rugby, and the Springboks stopped them in their tracks and beat them by a point. I mean, I can't think of another team that I know of that has been able to go and beat the other 6 teams in the top 7 in the world in a row in a tournament and then win that trophy. So no, I don't think it'll be repeated for a long, long time.
And then on that point, where does this current Springbok group coaches sort of as a team rank among some of the best team ever? We're now talking 2 World Cups, the British and Irish Lions series. I mean, does this make them one of the best rugby sides the game has ever seen?
Has to be. They've got to be up there. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of achievements in rugby that I sort of look up to as ground shaking in terms of the amazing nature of the win. I mean, the Springboks, remember the Springboks won on a test series in New Zealand last in 1936. And, the British and Irish Lions drew a series there. They didn't win it. They drew a series there. France have been to New Zealand and beaten them. These are all things that come up in my memory, if I'm thinking about like great achievements. The Springbok team going and winning away from home in Japan was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. New Zealand have had 2 of their 3 World Cup victories have been at home. South Africa, 1 of the 4. And you've got to think to yourself that this team and their coaches and the players and the leadership have got to be up there in some of the greatest achievements of rugby ever.
And now, so moving on, so now we're talking about this almost being, as I said, I mean, such a golden era, such a phenomenal team and achievement. The next step, what is this going to mean for the future of SA Rugby? Because for years and years, we've spoken about how South Africa is, in many ways, sort of the breadbasket of rugby in the world in terms of the number of players it produces, more players than anyone else, in terms of professional rugby players scattered all over the world. And now we've managed to find a system where these players are no longer lost to the system. These players go overseas, they go everywhere, they can come back and they can be turned into the best side in the world. What does this mean for the future of SA Rugby? Is this now the time where we need to use this to make sure that we continue to sort of be at this dominant force that we have been at times over the last couple of things, but maybe haven't always been as consistent as, your great New Zealand sides, for example. New Zealand have always, doesn't matter where they are, they always seem to be competitive. Is this now, the start of maybe that era of us almost sort of being able to hold into this dominance also in between World Cups, which is also something that previous block sides have struggled with?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the important thing here is that the work's been done on the field by the team, which is the important sort of draw card for youngsters to want to participate in the game. It's a well-known fact that the week after a World Cup final victory in South Africa, everybody's wearing the green and gold jerseys. Everybody's excited and down at the park and kicking, up and unders with their dad and their mates and wants to play rugby and subscriptions for rugby clubs to go through the roof, and rugby podcasts and magazines and TV shows are all watched by everybody. So we're rugby mad anyway, but there's a big spike, and I think if the administration of South African rugby can use that spike to maintain this fantastic direction that they've had, where they've got good participation across the spectrum in South Africa, privileged and non-privileged. And we've said it before, talent is universal. Opportunity is not. If we can give the opportunity to the next, 5,000 Siya Khaleesi's and Faf de Klerks and Peter Steph de Toys, then we'll continue to get better. I mean, there's something in our soil. Maybe there's something in the air in on that southern tip of Africa, which makes us all want to play this game and be world champions. I've loved it. I've seen very good examples in overseas documentaries. Eastern Bloc countries taking up water polo. And not really even having the pools to practice in, but having obstinate, difficult, entrepreneurially minded coaches saying we're going to get in and we're going to be good, and then winning championships. If we say that, hey, listen, there's lots of sports we're good at. I mean, we're a World Cup semi-finalist in cricket this year alone. Top 4 in the world. But if rugby's our shining light and we get better and better and better, we might be the country in the world that's best known for rugby. And what a badge to wear. I think it'd be amazing. So I would just say that I think the administrators have gotten the opportunity with the URC and this amazing interest in the URC, which is the domestic competition that they all play in now. And having the wherewithal to keep the teams alive and play the players, in your domestic competition that are going to be playing for your national team. The outliers are the players that are playing in Japan, which is an extra earner for the guys, which is fine because the South African rand doesn't stretch as far as the pound or the dollar, as we know. And the Japanese yen is far more accommodating in terms of salary expectations for players. So if those players can come and play at least a portion of their rugby in the URC and the domestic competitions, then we're very lucky, and we will continue to get better. And I just think it's the time has come to seize that, so the leadership in those corridors of power, they've got a great opportunity to show how good they are at what they do.
Right. So before we talk about the URC itself, we're talking about the administration, and there's going to be a bit of a change to the coaching structure now that something like Jacques Nienaber has left. Rasmus is going to be sort of stepping into that role, and we sort of wait to see whether he will be appointing somebody else to help him. But life after Jacques Nienaber, someone who's had to earn his stripes, and always be proving people wrong all the time. Very quickly sort of written off as someone who didn't have head coach experience, for example, but which was never an issue for SA Rugby, and they really backed him. But what do we lose now in Jacques Nienaber, and just how much are we going to miss in the next few years?
Yeah, I think we'll miss Jacques a lot. He's been a foil for Rassie. They've worked together very well, and every great person has always got someone that he can bounce ideas off, things that he can work on in his quiet times. It's not all just this lonely journey that you're on your own. So I think we'll miss that, and we'll miss the camaraderie that he's eschewed with or not eschewed, that's the wrong word, that he's embraced with the senior players in the team. I think his leadership has been one of sort of almost stoic quietness, not there to shout about things before the time. So we'll miss that. And he's a character. He's a nice guy. He's a loving guy. He's a real contributor. We'll miss him. He'll be taking up a role in Leinster, and they've got a very good coaching environment already. I'm sure he'll be contributing to that, before very long. And I think we might feel the impact of that if we've got to come up against him. That's the life that you go on as a coach. You got to, one week you're in the inner circle, and the next week you're playing against the guys that you've coached before. So it's a journey that he's on, and I know he'll enjoy it. He's rugby mad. He's a great South African export for us, and it'd be a good example of a good human out there.
So you spoke about that sort of the combination, and they sort of earned that nickname, Ras Namba. And as a duo, and Rasmus has been the head coach, Jacques been the head coach, but both those two have been in charge for the last the last two World Cups. Where do they rank amongst some of the great coaches ever to be part of the game?
Yeah, I think they're right up there. I would say that Rassie's been a real innovator along his whole career, and that's not lost on people who've worked with him. I mean, he did a lot of what he was doing early days at the Free State or the Cats environment, and then Western Province, and he's done it at Munster, and he's done it with the Springboks. So he'll rank up there as a real innovator, whether it's stirring trouble or stirring the pot with other coaches and supporters and media members, or just being the character that he is. I love what he's done for the game and for South Africa. I think I think in terms of the two of them together, sometimes you just get these lovely little matches made in heaven. They just work. They the sort of the Laurel and the Hardy, the black and the white, the yin and the yang. It doesn't really matter. I think they work well together. They'll probably always be good together. It doesn't matter where they coach, and we'll see that progress as their careers go by. But certainly right up there in terms of the most effective coaching duo in the history of rugby.
Rassie Erasmus now needs to rebuild a lot of this team. It has been a bit of an aging squad, although I do think that they are starting to show that a bit that 32, 33, even apparently 37, 38 isn't too old to play international rugby, but it is now a full World Cup cycle. It's the first 4-year cycle that Rassie's really had due to COVID and stuff like that. What are the next steps here? How do we start integrating the next generation? How much do you integrate them, and how much do you sort of keep the current squad? How do you get that balance right of rejuvenating it whilst also sort of trying to keep that core and trying to keep that momentum going?
Well, I think that's the secret, isn't it? That's what he's done so well. He's kept. I mean, in the squad he had a number of players who were present in 2019, but not playing in this World Cup, and were there as backups. They knew the systems, they knew the environment. They were probably good enough, but they'd been edged out by current talent and current form, actually. So I think it's a balance of getting that right, making sure that you've got coverage in all the areas where you want it. I mean, he's been playing a 7-1 bench. He's gonna want to look towards, sort of big, strong front rankers and second rowers and blindside flankers and open siders and number 8s that can deliver the game that he's asked of the players in the last 4 years. So I think the most important thing that I would say is that he's already demonstrated he can do it. So it's a bit of more of the same, but I'm sure he's gonna push himself to try and be innovative in how he goes about managing that squad and the URC and the integration of the goals of the head coach and the goals of South African rugby for the benefit of the national team will be super important, and I'm sure Rassie's well placed to do that.
So then the big question is on everybody's list at the moment is, we went back to back. Is the three-peat on?
Jeepers, it's a long way out right now. If he carries on doing what he's doing in the innovations and the work, then absolutely, it's always on. South Africa is never too far away from playoff rugby in a World Cup. So if we're there and thereabouts, you would imagine that it's very possible. And I would, if I was going to be a betting man on this one, the person that I'd back in World Rugby at the moment to aim for and try and secure a three-peat would be Rassie Erasmus.
Cool. Well, let's hope that, in 4 years' time, much like we had in that initial conversation, we're talking about us in another hopeful World Cup final and a third in a row. Let's bring things a bit closer to home in the URC. We are now sort of 6-7 rounds in, but it's not been the start to URC for a lot of the teams that a lot of us would like. I think some of them obviously suffering that sort of post-World Cup hangover. The Sharks, for example, missing a lot of their Springboks. But one thing which has already stood out early on in the season is our teams. Obviously, I think having Springboks will help them a lot. But they struggled early on with traveling, which has now been a bit of a recurring theme in the last couple of years. You've traveled and stuff like that, and play games abroad. What is it about traveling and playing those sort of games away that makes it so difficult? And how can our URC teams start to adjust towards that?
Well, look, I think they will adjust. I mean, remember the UK teams haven't travelled yet in the extent that we have. We've had sort of 4-week trips, 3.5 and 4-week trips already. They've had 1 2-weeker. I think the travel itself is just lack of normal comforts, the comforts of home. You're missing your family, you're missing your friends, you're missing your kids. And you're not able to train on the same times or even time zones that you used to. So there's a little bit of fracturing to your daily routine, and that affects you. But then you've also got 100 years of history where, home teams have won more than away teams, and you've got to contend with baying home fans when you're heading out to the lofty heights of sort of Ravenhill or the environment where Leinster play or Munster play. It's Thomond Park is a difficult place to go and win. So I mean, I think those kind of games you would expect to be more difficult because of history, and the guys will get into it. I mean, remember, there is a big hangover from winning a World Cup, and those players then having early rests in the season. We saw Eben Etzebeth come onto the field for the Sharks and score a cracking try from a number of meters out. He was looking fresh and rested and happy to be there. So I think all the players will be delighted that their Springboks are back, and I think we'll see it getting better.
Now, you mentioned something like Eben Etzebeth. We've already seen a couple of players going over. Siya Kolisi moving to Racing, making his debut this past weekend. Stephen Kitsoff as well. I think there's quite a number of players, sort of in that sort of age bracket where now it is sort of seen as that last sort of move overseas, last sort of big money move. Do you think that this is going to become the norm where we're going to see players sort of moving sort of at that sort of time? And in terms of player retention, how important is it to retain these players versus from a South African or Springbok point of view, being able to have these players go overseas, still be available and stuff like that? And with that player retention, how do our SA teams become competitive on multiple stages and not just compete in the URC, but are getting to Champions Cup semi-finals, winning the Champions Cup, winning the Challenge Cup? How do you think they get that balance right?
Well, look, I mean, we can't really complain. We've only played in two, Champions Cups, Challenge Cups. We've won it. We won one out of two URCs, and we're a silver medal holder in the other one. I think we've proved ourselves at a domestic level. European Championship rugby brings the French element into it, and they have got well-stocked teams with big paychecks and big international player lineups and player rosters. And I think we can get there. I think, as long as we've got to get the finances of our teams right. We're competing in euros and pounds, but we're playing in rands. So we have to be able to get a system where we can get the players paid what they need to be paid, but not necessarily only because they're playing a number more games. We're sharing them with either European or Japanese teams. So I think that would help. I also think as World Rugby gets closer and closer to a single season and doesn't have the overhang where there's sort of 6 games each side of a global season, where we play all 6 both sides, which means we get an extra 12 games, which means we're doing 40 games a year when everyone else is doing 30 or 28, then I think we'll get there. But slowly I think World Rugby have had a lot of big meetings in and around this World Cup and are moving quite quickly, it seems, towards a global season. I think that'll benefit South Africa very much.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how that does change everything, especially in terms of player welfare point of view. The likes of Jasper Wiese, for example, a lot of the overseas players having to play plenty of minutes. Right, this weekend we have a local derby. The Sharks coming up to play against the Bulls. Sharks on the back of their first win of the season. The Bulls have looked much better so far in the early stages, looked very, very positive. How do you see this one playing out, and are you bold enough to give us a bit of a prediction?
Look, I think it's going to be a big clash. It's an important part of the season. I caught up with the Bulls management. I saw Gary Gold and Jake White and Chris Rousseau and a couple of the guys who were at Edinburgh for a big game, which I thought they really had a chance in, and I felt really sorry for them not managing to squeak that one home. But I also feel that they started their tour well, and they're a good squad. They're well built, well financed, well looked after. The Sharks, started the season poorly, but came back and had a nice performance last week. I would say that the Sharks probably need this win more than the Bulls do after their opening with 2 wins in the season. So let's say that motivates them a bit more. Then it's difficult because it's at home for the Bulls. So I think it's going to be a 22-all draw.
It'll be certainly entertaining if we do say that. It's been interesting to see. I mean, the Sharks going from not having won a game to putting well over 50 points. The Bulls have been scoring tries for fun. So yeah, I do think it's a high scoring game is definitely on the cards. In terms of a URC overall winner, the Stormers have won it. They've gone to a final. From what you've seen, and when you look at the squads, is there a clear favourite? Somebody that you think you can back for an overall URC winner? Is it a South African team, or are we going to see a different winner this season? What do you think when we come to the end of this competition?
I think this URC is going to be tough for South Africa to win, and I'm a very positive person. I'm looking for the positives. I just think that we've had a crammed end of year last year into a big World Cup, and there's a lot going on that means. The squads have been shaken up a little bit. Some players are coming back. I think it's going to be tough for a South African team to win. If they do and they get their game on with all the Springboks back, I think the Sharks will be a good contender. But I do believe that the Stormers and the Bulls are in that running as well. The Lions, I like the rugby that the Lions are playing. I really do. I just worry about the depth of squad at the moment, and I think they are building on that and they are working on that as I understand it, as I hear. So if it's not a South African winner, which it might well be, I mean, you can't look too far past these dominant Irish teams at the moment, and perhaps the way that Glasgow are playing with old Franco Smith at the helm there, they might be a tough team to beat. So I think you got to pick one of either the South African franchises or possibly the Irish. And if you look at that, it's Leinster, Munster. Leinster knocked Munster over on the weekend. 50,000 people at the Aviva Stadium. What a classic clash between those two teams. Maybe Leinster with everybody back and without the pressure on themselves of delivering for a Johnny Sexton, because every time he wheeled himself out last year, it was, Johnny's lost this or last semi-final. I mean, he must have been tired of it by the end. But if they settle a new back line, they've got an amazing forward pack. They'd be tough to beat.
Yeah, I think, and the nice thing is, from a South African perspective, is that there's plenty of South African coaches and players floating around in the various teams. So always somebody for South African to get behind. Right, so looking forward to revisiting that prediction towards the end of the season. And obviously this weekend, Bulls versus Sharks is going to be an absolutely brilliant one. Been a while since we've had an SA derby. All the Boks expected to be back, and hopefully that should be a great one. Bobby, thank you so much for your time. And we'll chat to you soon, and hopefully talk when we chat again. The South African or Springboks are doing lots more cool things, and SA Rugby continues to be on the upwards trajectory.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thanks for having me.